On behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Verifiably-robust Virtual Data Protection, presented by Christophe Bertrand of Arcserve and Carl Seabold of Compass Health. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. You can learn more about VMUG by clicking the Documents in your Resource List widget to your left. Before we begin today, I have 3 quick housekeeping items. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for on-demand. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation, so make sure that all questions are entered into the Q&A widget window that is also to your left. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please make sure to take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. Okay, so let's get started. I would like to introduce you to today's speakers, Christophe Bertrand, VP of Product Marketing for Arcserve, and Carl Seabold, Director of IT for Compass Health. Christophe, I would now like to turn things over to you.
Thank you very much, Candice. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this webcast. In the next few minutes, I will spend some time covering our solution, which is called Arcserve Unified Data Protection. And then I'll turn it over to Carl, who's joining us today. And thank you very much for doing so, Carl. And Carl's Director of IT for one of a healthcare organization and one of our customers, Compass Healthcare, and in the Midwest. And you'll see that he has had a great experience with our solution, but more importantly, we'll share with you some best practices around how to deploy robust data protection for virtual environments, and there's quite a bit that he will share again in the second part of this presentation. What I'd like to do is spend some time covering who Arcserve is, because you may not know us, or you may know us from a previous life. And actually, we've had ourselves multiple lives, and it's important to remember that Arcserve has been independent now for almost 3 years. We were previously part of CA Technologies, and we decided that it would be better for us and for everyone to be independent, and found a great investor. And I was part of the team who really carved this company out, and we're now very, very successful as an independent company. We still have a global presence around the world, many customers on our solution, Arcserve UDP, Unified Data Protection. That's a new architecture, new technology that we launched about the same time we became independent, so almost 3 years in market now, and very successful, as you can see by the number of customers we've acquired. And we have the ability to sell the solution through a network of great partners around the world. The fact that we're a global company gives us exposure to many types of different data protection issues and disaster recovery scenarios, and that's allowed us to also build on our software to provide additional solutions that I'll cover in a minute, such as the Arcserve UDP appliance, which Carl will talk about, as well as the Arcserve Cloud, which is our specialty, if you will, or DRaaS, Disaster Recovery as a Service, cloud offering. We also support a number of other cloud environments and cloud solutions, and I'll cover that in a minute. We're designed for and leverage virtual environments. So virtualization is in the DNA of Arcserve UDP. It was really designed to be extremely robust, to not only protect virtual environments, but also to leverage virtualization in general terms, VMware in particular, in the process of disaster recovery and data protection. So this was actually recognized only 1 year in market, with many awards at VMworld. So that was a year and a half ago or so, and we won, I think, all of the awards associated with data protection, disaster recovery project, best data protection solution, etc. So as you can see, a very different company, being independent, very much an innovator with Arcserve UDP, and I'll cover the solution in a minute so you understand what it is. I don't want to give you a product pitch, because I really want us to spend a lot of time on the essence here of the webcast today, but I just wanted to point out that we have, again, gained a lot of traction and credibility with our solution in the market. So let's talk about Arcserve UDP, and I'm going to build a picture for you, which is really a high-level view of the architecture of the solution. First of all, as I indicated, we support virtual environments, VMware, obviously, Hyper-V. We also support physical environments very well. Now, again, when it comes to physical support, it may not be, the most of your environment today. Most environments are virtualized, but sometimes you can't virtualize for whatever reason. So it's nice to have a solution that understands how to protect physical environments really well. And I mean by that not just a workstation or a workstation-based type of agent. You really need to do things very thoroughly when it comes to physical support. Tape is still kicking around, and we have obviously been in business for many years and have a thorough understanding of complex tape environments that we've ported over into UDP. So it's a nice plus to have if you still use tape or you work maybe with a service where tape is one of the medium you use for long-term archiving, long-term retention, etc. So again, something to think about here. What makes us really different and sets us apart is the fact that we have global source-side deduplication built into the solution. I'll cover it in a separate slide in a minute, but just know that this results in tremendous storage savings and great performance in the backup and recovery processes. Now, other vendors out there claim they have deduplication. It's not necessarily global and source-side, so beware that it's not just a checkbox. There's a lot more that meets the eye. We receive a lot of screenshots from our customers that show us how much they're actually saving from those from the reports they get from our solution, and it's really, really efficient. The benefit of the global deduplication is that it allows you to protect data once and then to share those blocks across and that understanding across all of the sites, making the backups faster and also allowing you through a process of replication, which by the way is built in, so you don't have to pay extra for replication. It's built in and it's WAN optimized. You can go replicate to another site, for example. Here I'm showing an example of a remote office or branch office scenario where you have a UDP appliance. Now, you could also go to a secondary site, maybe a disaster recovery site, managed service provider, data center, whatever the case may be. And you can see the permutations and how you can replicate multiple times to multiple sites depending on your requirements. Again, the one thing we also do really well is cloud. We were really designed to be a cloud-based or a cloud based solution in that we leverage it as a solution, as a destination, but also we can run in the cloud. And we can do some pretty advanced stuff. If, for example, you use, just take an example, AWS, we can do disaster recovery as a service with AWS with very, very nice recovery point objective profiles and recovery time objectives. Of course, we have our own offering, or you can be, if you have a partner that you work with or a company you work with, they can also host our UDP solution in a more of a private cloud setting. So many options for you and a lot of flexibility. The point I want to make about the appliance here is that it runs the Arcserve UDP software. So in essence, the software is interoperable across all the platforms or modalities that you decide to deploy. So you could run a server with your own software and storage deployment in one location and then get appliance or appliances for remote sites, or you could just decide to run on one appliance in your primary data center if it works better for you. So again, we'd like to provide our technology with a lot of options and flexibility. We sell into what we call the mid-market. So that means that we're not just at the bottom of the market in a very small business, SMB. Of course, our solution could work there as well. It certainly covers it with our UDP standard and advanced editions. But we really focus in the mid-market in general as a business, but can go all the way up to the distributed enterprise as well. So because of the flexibility of the software and the many capabilities we offer, including high availability capabilities, full high availability capabilities that we see quite a bit in demand at the top of the mid-market, we really give our customers many options, again, to consume our solution. Now, let me tell you why it matters, why the mid-market is an important thing for you as you listen to this webcast. What we've built with Arcserve UDP is a solution that really takes what used to be siloed data protection processes or solutions. We've put that into one place under one pane of glass with ease of use. So we've learned ease of use from working in the mid-market and in the SMB, but we've brought essentially down what you would find in the enterprise in terms of features. So really what we are is enterprise class, but small team simple. We're easy to use, yet we have a lot of, if not all of the enterprise type of features you would expect from a disaster recovery solution. And that was really the design point for Arcserve UDP, and that's what makes it so unique and so broad and deep in terms of features. Yet, again, easy to use, easy to deploy, and the same applies to the appliances. We've made them easy to deploy with a number of wizards and capabilities to simplify the work. So as we look at some of the capabilities that I mentioned, one of them that I highlighted earlier on was global deduplication. I just wanted to point this out if you're more technical here, because the problem with data protection and backup is how much storage it consumes. And there are solutions out there that don't really do dedupe very well, and they don't do global source-side deduplication. And what that results in is the fact that you have to sometimes use another deduplication appliance to essentially compress those backups. And that's an extra cost. And it's also operational complications, et cetera. It's more, maintenance you have to pay every year, et cetera, right? So our design point when we created UDP was to really get deduplication built in and built in at the source so that it doesn't slow down the nodes it's protecting. So it's a very light process, and all of the workload, and really the center of the operation here is the recovery point server, which is where we do the block level incremental backups, where we process them, where the dedupe gets essentially understood and figured out in terms of metadata and where it belongs, et cetera, and where it gets replicated as well to another recovery point server. So the minute you recover, you replicate the data between recovery point servers, and again, remember, it's optimized. You essentially get disaster recovery because you have a secondary site that has all the data from that primary site. And by the way, you can combine it with more servers, more nodes, more workstations from other sites. If it's all in the same data store, everybody shares. So what that means, to simplify it and give you a very simple example, once we've seen a block once, when we've seen data once, we don't back it up again. We don't transfer it between the node and the recovery point server. So it makes essentially, if you have a very coherent type of environment where you use a lot of the similar operating systems, a lot of data is actually similar, you can get to very, very nice compression ratios in terms of how much storage you need. Also, it means the replication between recovery point servers is going to be very fast, because once you've made your first copy, you only have to all you're doing is resyncing or syncing those updates. So it makes, again, going through a WAN optimized process makes things really smooth. So as I said, we're a global company, and you may ask yourself, well, why you bring this up? Well, guess what? Not everybody has the bandwidth we have here in the U.S. And by the way, not everybody can afford the bandwidth here even we have here in the U.S. So it's important for us to have designed a solution that works very well also in locales where bandwidth is restricted and where data is still very critical and where it's important to have a very optimized solution. So again, we've really learned from all of these experiences to build this solution with global dedupe. And finally, there are many other capabilities that I should mention around deduplication, but just know that we can also send all of that data that's deduped and leverage that deduplication in the cloud, for example, where you're going to need and pay for less storage by having deduplication deployed. So lots of advantages. Again, it's about efficiency of backup and recovery, and also the efficiency and the cost of the operation. A couple more things I want to cover before we go, before I turn this over to Carl, is the fact that we have, of course, great capabilities around VMware and Hyper-V as well. We, again, have been and were designed with virtualization in mind, and virtualization as not only a source that we protect, but also a process that we fully leverage in our technology to provide for great disaster recovery type of capabilities and great RPOs and RTOs. So first things first, how do we back up the environment? Well, we have Agentless backup. So as you can see here, we support a variety of environments. We keep, of course, up to date with the various developments that happen on the VMware side of things. We have a number of the traditional certifications you can expect. We do test everything that comes out, and typically we release our support very quickly as those updates become available. So we provide, again, the ability to give you a lot of granular capabilities around protecting those virtual environments that you have, but also doing it in a way that simplifies the deployment because of the agentless nature of what we can do. Something to bear in mind, and something that really matters as you deploy a backup and recovery solution in a highly virtualized VMware environment. We provide also for a couple of interesting capabilities associated with how you leverage virtualization in the context of disaster recovery. So what's really nice about the way we've approached it is that, first of all, we are supporting environments that are heterogeneous, whether Linux or Windows. And our view is that we are going to be as agnostic as we can be, as you can expect from a vendor like us. And we also know a lot of our customers use a variety of hypervisors, not just necessarily just one. We're seeing a lot more diversity. So we try to keep a feature function parity between environments. Now, of course, there are differences, but just know that we support instant VMs, which is something that allows you to essentially turn a virtual machine on directly from the recovery point server, and from that point you can essentially recover whatever node or backup from the latest recovery point that you have in that recovery point server. When we stand that virtual machine up and recover the recovery point, you can literally go look at every node and run those for example, servers directly from that virtual machine, should you need to do that in the disaster recovery scenario. So that's a very interesting capability. We also have a twist on that with Linux environments. For those of you who are interested, and there's quite a bit that we could add to this as I look at the fact that we also support the same capability in EC2, in AWS EC2. With the AMI type of proxy environment they provide. So again, the point I want to make here is virtualization in our case is also not just backing up virtual environments, but virtualization is a methodology we use to optimize disaster recovery capabilities, whether in Windows environment or Linux environments, and again across hypervisors. Oops, I think I just went a little too fast here. We also have a capability that we call virtual standby. So it can be local or remote, meaning you can do this just on a local site, or you can have it with a distant site. And what virtual standby does, and it's very unique to Arcserve UDP, essentially it has a virtual machine, as the name indicates, in standby, ready to go with the latest recovery point that you have with the recovery point server. So the benefit of that is that should anything come up, you literally have the ability to go access that machine. It's got the latest backup, the recovery point, whatever is in that recovery point, you have access to, and you can run. So that's really very powerful, and it's a great solution. If you have work maybe with an MSP or again, a similar type of capability is available for private and public clouds. We take care of the recovery point conversion, into a number of different formats and essentially automate a number of the operations that make it a lot simpler for you at the end of the day to access or fail over to that recovery point and that virtual machine. So the virtual standby is really something I highly, highly recommend to have for any critical environment. And of course, there are many other capabilities I could talk about, but enough about the product, enough about the feature functions. Let's see them in action. So I'd like to take a second here and introduce Carl Seabold, who is with Compass Healthcare. And Carl, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my experience both at Compass and dealing with Arcserve. Looking over my history, I've worked in tech for a long time and started with my own little business back in the 90s. But my big migration and growth started when I worked for an SMB about 5 to 10 years ago. I learned quite a bit about virtualization there, and it's something that I got really excited about because who doesn't like running, 10 different virtual machines on a desktop to be able to do your, bidding on eBay or whatnot. So virtualization has always been, since my time at the SMB, something I've been excited about. And when I moved to Compass, I thought I was going to get really bored because I went from taking care of 20 offices and 600 or so employees to only dealing with 6 or 7 offices and about 180 employees. As I started digging into the job, though, I found out how much being responsible for every aspect of those networks was going to be. Instead of just taking care of what the client was telling us to take care of in the SMB world, I was responsible for everything. And as the loose marriage of Compass started to come together in 2013 and 2014, I was seeing how much of a challenge I had ahead of me. I had some offices that had very poor backups. Some of them were running white box servers in quote marks that didn't have redundant power supply or not even a RAID array. And in fact, one of my offices didn't have a good backup for over a year before I took over. So one of the first things I needed to focus on was kind of standardizing my networks. And at that point, our budget was a very touchy subject, as I'm sure it is for a lot of you that work out in as like a director of IT for a smaller business or even one that's kind of growing to that medium business. And it was doubly hard because I had all these individual offices that before Compass were standalone, so they had their own smaller budget they had to work with, and very rarely can I get them all to come together and approve something big. So what I started out doing was virtualizing each one of their environments and standardizing them as best I could. So with the budget being the primary concern, we had to go with Hyper-V initially, and thankfully I had my certification with Microsoft, the MCITP certification. I really, really want to go with VMware eventually. I know that there's a couple new products coming out that I'm keeping an eye on, but VMware is where I really cut my teeth at the SMB and really like working within the VMware interface. And of course, you get a lot more power out of your machines with the smaller hypervisors. So basically, I went from 24 servers, everything from nice rack mount ones to tower ones to those converted white boxes, and convert them all down to about 14, give or take, Hyper-V servers. And once that was done, which took about 1.5 years to complete between all the different budgets, the next big task was to try to standardize the backups. As I said, some of the backups were very inefficient, not working real well. I was doing tapes, I was doing Microsoft backup to USB drives. I had one of the companies was using Acronis and trying to write it over to a NAS, and it was just a mess. And I'm sure anyone that's come into a new business as an IT person, they've run into some of these nightmares. But for me, starting with the virtualization, I kind of knew that I needed to find a company that really focused on it. And at my time at the SMB, we used Veeam pretty much exclusively. And Veeam has always been my, the first thing off the tip of my tongue when it comes to virtualization backup. So I started my exploration trying to find the best backup solution, and I actually called on my old SMB company and a couple other friends that were still in the SMB world, because they seem to stay on the cutting edge of a lot of technology that's coming out, and they get a lot of material from the new companies that come out. And Arcserve came up from two different sources as one that I need to check out. And of course I wanted to put it through its paces, so I ran the demo for a little bit, just in just a virtual machine. And I don't have my stats anymore from what I found, but the numbers were really, really incredible. Like the dedupe rate for just one of my hypervisors was around 55% from week to week. So I was really, really impressed by how much it was able to reduce my backup footprint. The other thing that I was impressed about a couple of years ago was that I had every form of recovery available to me. Not only could I do like the full restoration of a virtual machine, I could do the bare metal of the hypervisor, but I could also get granular and do recovery of individual files off of my file server. I could dig into Exchange without doing any PowerShelling or anything like that, and I could load up databases and pull out tables as necessary right through the Arcserve interface. It was something that I really had only seen in smaller software, something that had been made for one niche market. And Arcserve was able to do everything from top to bottom. So then the discussion went to, well, how do we want to deploy this? I had a couple of retired servers that I could use for hosting Arcserve, but when the appliance was presented, it was the ability to do the instant VM was the thing that really got me interested in doing the appliance. I could do all of my backup through one central spot. It was warranted through Arcserve. Everything was built to be, well, perfect right out of the box. And it really set me up to start my backup process really well. I see one of the questions over here is that how long did it take for me to actually deploy? Well, I'm a very methodical, project management oriented person, so it did take me about 2 to 3 weeks to fully implement it across all my networks. I wanted to take my time and actually watch my backups, so I had a lot of late nights kind of monitoring and seeing what was actually going on through the Arcserve dashboard. And I also wanted to keep some metrics for how long things were taking, and I did have a couple little bugs that crept in. Oh, I missed a slide. So virtualization, hey, there we go. That's where I reduced our footprint. Anyhow, so it did take me a few weeks to fully implement it, and as the small diagram on the right shows, I still had a number of servers on other locations hooked up through VPNs, and I didn't want to fully tap those connections, and I wasn't quite sure how much bandwidth I was going to be using for some of those initial backups, so I wanted to take my time and deploy it right and make sure I had good backups. So pretty much I would spend Thursday and Friday night, doing the initial full backups. I would turn on an instant VM on Saturday, make sure that was looking good, and then Sunday I would do like a small incremental backup just to see how much time that would take. And I would do that for each one of my organizations week to week. Let's see. So outside of our EMR Exchange and file servers, we pretty much are a homogeneous network. We run pretty much all Windows Server 2008 and 2012. There's, of course, some exceptions there, like one of our DICOM servers is a niche Linux distribution, which gets backed up just like everything else through Arcserve. So I knew that we had a lot of potential for data deduplication through all of this, and my last check last night showed that I was backing up 22.11 terabytes of recoverable data, and I was taking up 5.62 terabytes of actual storage, and that's a 74.5% reduction, and that includes both data deduplication and compression. The dedupe is around 55%, and the compression is something like 65%. So we're getting a really, really good return on investment with the appliance, especially with the ability to turn on virtual machines right there on the appliance, right from the backup. Like I can have a VM up and running in minutes if I need to. And I just want to mention that I do have a number of my backups where I've got several hundreds of incrementals that I can go back to if necessary. I'll, of course, tombstone and let some of the old, really old ones go away, but like my file server, I like to keep a lot of old data that may get deleted unbeknownst to the user, and I want to be able to pull that back if necessary. So one of my best practices, one of the things that I learned through dealing with the Arcserve support, which is really fantastic, is that you want to set up your hypervisor as your proxy. Like when you set up the plan for Arcserve for the hypervisor, you have the opportunity to tell it what your proxy server is going to be, and you can set it to be your UDP appliance or your UDP virtual machine. But I highly recommend you set, especially with a larger network with a number of Hyper-V hosts, set the host as your proxy. That way it gets backed up to the host, and then sent off to the appliance, and then wherever else you need to redundantly store it. And like my explanation of how I deployed it initially, take some time when you first roll it out and see how long it takes to do. I mean, anytime that you set up a new backup routine, it's been pretty normal practice for me to watch it the first couple times at least to make sure I know what I'm looking at for time frames and know what kind of errors may be popping up. And yeah, so take your time and set it up so that you can maximize the number of backups you can get. Don't forget to set up your merge. So every Saturday, thankfully in the medical field, it's mostly Monday through Friday, some Saturdays for one of my offices. So I usually have Saturdays to do merges, which allows the Arcserve UDP software to basically compress and dedupe and make sure that your backups are all as compressed as possible. If anyone's running SQL, another one of my favorite technologies, you can do your truncation of the logs right from the Arcserve interface after backups are completed, which saves one more step that you have to set up through SQL. And again, if you're running a multiple Active Directory domain environment like I am, I'm sure most of this is something that most people in that type of environment are aware of. You want to have like a management network just for your servers. That way you can have one unified username and password for your backups, and it's a lot easier, especially with Hyper-V using its migration tools, being able to move virtual machines between hosts when they're all on the same domain. You don't have to manually move files to get things up and running. And finally, the thing that I normally can't brag about is the support. I have had to contact their support a number of times. Actually, let me look at my tickets real quick. I've got 9 tickets that have been opened with them, and every one of them I've gotten a call back when they said that they were going to call back. I get normal updates from them, even if it's a, hey, I'm checking it out. Their support has been one of the best that I've dealt with. I can't think of a better vendor that I've worked with in my 20 years where I've gotten the information I need and the on, hands on deck when I do have a big issue. So definitely use their support. So how did they fit in? They fit in well for me because we are a virtual environment. All but one of our servers is a Hyper-V host, and Arcserve really focused on making my environment easy to manage the backups for. I'll give you one example. Before the latest version, 6.5, came out, I wanted to do my recovery VR tests manually. With the new version, there's some automated tools which make it much simpler. So it just so happened that my very last manual data recovery test was my largest database, which included about 700 gigabytes of actual database. And I wanted to do a recovery to another hot spare, not the UDP appliance itself, someplace where it could run for a couple of days to a couple of weeks if necessary. And I believe it was a Dell T710, one of my retired from production servers, but one that I have replaced the hard drives on and keep running. So anyhow, this 700 gigabytes of database and another 100 gigs of OS and stuff took just over 95 minutes to do a full restore, and I believe I have that running on 4 1 gigabit NICs on a team. And I was able to get the entire machine up and running in well under 2 hours. I had to do some changes with the VLANs and IPs to test it from a normal client, but to be able to do that much recovery and to get one of my businesses up and running again in under 2 hours is huge. I mean, of course your goal is zero downtime, but if you do have a building that burns down and you can get that building up and running in another space in under 2 hours with all the data the doctors need to be able to provide good patient care is great. I mean, I don't know how else to put that. So that's the other thing. The next big thing is the ability to do different recovery. Like I said, you can get in and do just manual file recovery with as many incremental backs as you need to go. You can mount that recovery VHD file wherever you need it. You can mount it to an existing VM and just drag and drop files over. You can export it and use your favorite VHD mounting tool and do it from a host. It really makes it really simple. You can get into databases and exchange databases and do recovery right through the Arcserve interface, so there's absolutely no PowerShelling, no mounting, no chance of overwriting a log file accidentally when you put the MDF file in the wrong place, anything like that. You can do full VM recovery, which is slick and easy. You can send it right back to the same host, a different host, however you need it to work. And of course, the hypervisor bare metal full recovery, which, knock on wood, thankfully I haven't had to do with Compass, but I know it's capable. I've done tests to convert that bare metal server to a VM, even though you can't run a VM in a VM, but I was able to recover it and get to the files. So, that was, top to bottom, you can do every type of recovery you need to do. And of course, some of the latest tools that came out with version 6.5 of UDP, where you can do automated data recovery testing and instant VM, it's freed up a ton of my time. I did a little analysis a couple months ago, and I'm now spending about 10 to 15% of my time that I used to managing and monitoring backups. And that's comparing to the initial backups that I was provided when I started taking over all of these Compass divisions. And the last thing is I'm able to offsite and send my backups between my offices. So if one burns down, I've got one of my other offices that I can quickly turn up a Hyper-V host and get those machines up and running. And if the loose marriage allows one division to allow another division to work in their office, we could have everything up and running in just a couple of hours. And with having the number of offices that we've got, I can, send it around to a few of them just in case. And being able to schedule that to run on the weekends or after the backups are done and only allow it to go to, say, 6 a.m. has been very, very helpful. So yeah, it's the next step for me is trying to compress a little bit more. I still have a couple of Exchange servers. I want to get down to one Exchange server for all of these organizations, and I want to get them all of the important data into a little bit more concise infrastructure. So that's why I'm thinking VMware or something else similar is going to be my next step. And Arcserve is actually going to help me with that. You can do Hyper-V to VMware conversions and vice versa. So my first step when I get to that point is I'm going to use Arcserve as my initial migration tool. I'm going to use it to move my existing Hyper-V servers to whatever I go to next. And that to me is, that's going to save me a lot of time, plus I'm familiar with the interface, and it's going to make that big project a little bit less stressful. So with that, I want to thank Arcserve for helping me and making my job easier.
Well, thank you very much for the great words, and more importantly, thank you for Carl, for going through all of these details. I think that definitely this was a very thorough presentation. So I think we have a few questions. So I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and ask more questions if you want to. Now is the time. We'll spend the next few minutes answering what we have here. So there's a question for you, Carl. How long did it take you to deploy the solution? So in your case, because it's an appliance, if I may ask you, from the time you got it to the time you got it to your first backup, may be the one way to approach it.
To my first backup to the appliance, I think it was just a day or two.
Okay, well, that's pretty
and
quick.
then until I had my entire environment properly backed up, I think it was 2 to 2.5 weeks total to get them all happy and green in the dashboard.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with the number of Hyper-V hosts and the number of locations, it was, little. I didn't want to tax my LAN-to-LAN VPN, so I wanted to take my time. I'm sure I could have done it quicker, but rather do it thoroughly and properly the first time.
Okay, perfect. Another question, what type of recovery point objectives can you expect with this solution? Well, I think you just mentioned yours, which was, or was a time objective, actually. It was 2 hours was what you tested. For recovery point objectives, I can tell you the frequency of backups on UDP is 15 minutes, so you can run snapshots every 15 minutes, so your RPO would be 15 minutes. But there's an option that's a high availability option that you can also purchase, which has essentially continuous data protection. technology and failover and failback built in. So it's our high availability module, and that gives you a recovery point objective that could be in under 1 minute and maybe even a few seconds, depending on the location and the distance it has to travel, etc. So that's what you can expect. Actually, let me ask you, Carl, what type of RPOs are you expecting, and RTOs do you need to have for your environment, bearing in mind you're dealing with patients and healthcare and essentially people's lives?
Well, it depends on the type of data. For my databases, I actually do backups using both SQL and Arcserve, so I get that raw file backup from SQL Backup, and those run at different times during the day. I usually have 2 backups of each day of our databases. And then for like our file servers, which are obviously a bigger attack vector for malware, I run Arcserve to pick up differentials every hour. I don't do every 15 minutes. That way I can, squeeze out a little bit more length of recovery if necessary. We do have a number of staff that don't realize they've moved files or deleted files, so I sometimes have to go back 2, 3, 4 months sometimes to get something they need, and I like to be able to do that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's very, very helpful. Let me see. Now, is the replication a separate charge? I guess this one's for me. So the answer is no, it's built in, so you can replicate recovery point servers or stores, or data stores, I should say, to as many recovery point servers as you want. Of course, if you have multiple appliances, you have to buy the actual appliances. But from a software perspective, we don't charge for the replication. It comes built in. Can you do migrations across hypervisors? And the answer is yes. Physical to virtual, virtual to physical, and virtual to virtual. Question for Carl that just came in, actually. Let me get to the top of it. I think I heard you had previous experience with Veeam. Did you compare both products, and what did you find? That's from Hector.
Yeah, I actually looked through quite a few different products. Veeam was, like I had said, one of my favorites when I worked for the SMB, primarily because Veeam was made for VMware, 5-6 years ago. I did compare them. The speed of recovery and the granularity of recovery were the 2 big difference makers for Arcserve. I still help out with a couple of my old clients with their Veeam environments, and I know that they've made some pretty big improvements over the last year, but Arcserve still is the right answer for what I've got running.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all we have time for at this point. So, Candice, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Christophe and Carl, for taking the time to speak with us today. And just as a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email directing you to the materials from today's webcast. Please make sure to complete a short online evaluation. It'll pop up as you exit the webcast, and let us know what you thought of today's session. And from all of us here at VMUG headquarters, thank you and have a great rest of your day, everyone.